The city, now called Istanbul, stretches across 2 continents, beneath the glow of suspension bridges and the echo of mosque loudspeakers. More than 16 million people move through its streets every day. Ferries carve white scars across the Bosporus while tourists sip tea only meters away from walls built by Roman emperors 16 centuries ago. And buried beneath the traffic, the apartment blocks, and the neon storefronts, lies the ghost of a city that once called itself the center of the world. Not Paris, not London, not Rome, Constantinople. For more than 1,100 years, this city stood as the final heartbeat of the Roman Empire. When the western half of Rome collapsed into chaos in the 5th century, Constantinople survived. It survived plague, crusades, civil wars, earthquakes, and siege after siege after siege. It held back Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, Russians, and eventually the unstoppable rise of the Ottoman Turks. And when the city finally fell in 1453, many people believed the world itself had entered a new age overnight. But the most astonishing part of Constantinople's story is not how often it nearly died, it is how many times it refused to. Because this city did not simply inherit Rome. For 1,000 years, it became Rome. The year is 324 AD. You stand on a windy ridge overlooking the narrow waters of the Bosporus. Fishing boats drift beneath steep hills, crowded with Greek houses and ancient temples. The old city here is called Byzantium, and at first glance it looks far too small for what Emperor Constantine the Great has planned. But Constantine sees something nobody else fully understands yet. Control this city, and you control the passage between Europe and Asia. Control the Bosporus, and you dominate trade flowing between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. Grain from Egypt, silk from China, spices from India, armies, gold, ideas, everything passes through this narrow throat of water. So Constantine makes a decision that shocks the Roman world. He abandons Rome itself. In 330 AD, he officially inaugurates Constantinople as the new capital of the Roman Empire. Workers flood into the city from every corner of the empire. Marble arrives from Greece. Columns arrive from pagan temples across the Mediterranean. Entire statues vanish from older cities and reappear here. Within decades, Constantinople transforms into one of the wealthiest cities on earth. And unlike old Rome, Constantinople has advantages that feel almost unfair. Water surrounds it on 3 sides. Massive land walls protect the western approach. Enemy armies must cross narrow choke points while defenders rain arrows, stones, and boiling oil from above. Even nature helps the city survive. Strong currents and unpredictable winds make naval attacks incredibly dangerous. Then comes one of the strangest ironies in history. The Roman Empire slowly stops looking Roman. People speak Greek more than Latin. Christian churches replace pagan temples. Emperors rule from glittering eastern palaces instead of the old Senate halls beside the Tiber River. Yet the people here never call themselves Byzantine, they call themselves Romans. Even in the 15th century, nearly 1,100 years later, they still do. And soon, the city faces its first great test. Because the western half of the empire is beginning to collapse. The year is 410 AD. News reaches Constantinople like a thunderclap. Rome has been sacked. For the first time in nearly 800 years, foreign soldiers have stormed the Eternal City. The Visigoths under Alaric march through Rome's streets while smoke rises above ancient temples and senators flee in terror. Across the empire, people panic. Many genuinely believe civilization itself is ending. But inside Constantinople, the reaction feels different. Concern, fear, calculation. The Eastern Empire remains richer, more urbanized, and far more stable than the West. Egyptian grain still feeds the population. Eastern trade still fills imperial treasuries. And most importantly, Constantinople's defenses remain intact. So while Western Europe fractures into competing kingdoms, the East survives. Then, in 476 AD, the last Western Roman emperor disappears from power entirely. A Germanic warlord removes the teenage emperor, Romulus Augustulus, from the throne. Historians later call this the fall of Rome. But if you lived in Constantinople at the time, that phrase would sound absurd. Rome has not fallen. Rome is standing right here, And Constantinople grows even stronger afterward. Massive forums fill with merchants speaking Greek, Armenian, Syriac, Coptic, and Latin. Hagia Sophia's early churches dominate the skyline. Imperial ceremonies become theatrical spectacles of gold, silk, incense, smoke, and military processions. Foreign ambassadors leave stunned by the city's wealth. One visiting diplomat later describes mechanical lions roaring beside the emperor's throne. Mechanical lions. In the 10th century. But beneath the splendor lurks constant danger. The Eastern Empire survives partly because it learns to play enemies against one another with ruthless skill. Emperors bribe invading tribes, arrange strategic marriages, spread misinformation, and weaponize diplomacy as effectively as armies. Sometimes survival requires something uglier. Political blinding becomes common because a blind man supposedly cannot rule. Rivals vanish into monasteries. Palace coups erupt in the dead of night. Constantinople dazzles the world while quietly drowning in intrigue. And then, in the 6th century, one emperor decides survival is not enough. He wants conquest. He wants Rome back. The year is 532 AD, and Constantinople is burning. You hear screaming echo through narrow streets as rioters smash statues and set entire districts ablaze. The chaos begins inside the Hippodrome, the gigantic chariot racing arena that functions as both sports stadium and political pressure valve. Fans of the blue and green racing factions turn their fury against Emperor Justinian I after years of crushing taxes and political tension. Then the riots spiral out of control. For 5 terrifying days, the capital teeters on the edge of revolution. Senators support rebellion. Crowds chant for a new emperor. Justinian himself reportedly considers fleeing the city. Then Empress Theodora delivers one of history's coldest speeches. Purple makes a fine burial shroud. In other words, better to die an emperor than live as a fugitive. Justinian stays. His generals trap tens of thousands of rioters inside the Hippodrome and slaughter them. Ancient sources claim around 30,000 people die in a single day. Blood pours across the arena floor where horse races once entertained the city, and out of that horror rises one of humanity's architectural masterpieces. Hagia Sophia. Built in just under 6 years, the massive church seems almost impossible for its time. Sunlight floods through its colossal dome until the ceiling appears suspended in mid-air. Visitors stand speechless beneath mosaics of gold that shimmer like firelight. One medieval observer claims the building feels not founded on solid masonry, but suspended from heaven. Even today, nearly 1,500 years later, its dome still dominates Istanbul's skyline. Hagia Sophia. Justinian pushes further. His armies reconquer North Africa from the Vandals. They invade Italy and reclaim Rome itself. For a moment, it seems the Roman Empire may truly reunite. Then disaster strikes from a direction nobody expects. Disease. In 541 AD, the plague of Justinian reaches Constantinople. Ships arriving from Egypt carry infected rats filled with fleas carrying Yersinia pestis, the same bacterium later responsible for the Black Death. Bodies pile in streets faster than workers can bury them. Ancient writers describe the stench becoming unbearable beneath the summer heat. At its peak, thousands die every single day. The empire never fully recovers. And soon, new enemies emerge from the deserts of Arabia, with a force that transforms the world forever. The year is 717 AD. Constantinople wakes beneath a black horizon. An enormous Arab fleet crowds the Bosporus, while siege engines hammer the famous Theodosian walls. The Umayyad Caliphate has exploded across the Middle East, North Africa, and Spain with astonishing speed. Entire empires collapse before them. Now they want Constantinople. If the city falls, Europe changes forever. You can smell smoke drifting across the harbor, while priests march along the walls carrying icons and relics. Civilians haul stones and arrows to exhausted defenders. Winter approaches, food grows scarce. Then the Byzantines unleash a terrifying weapon: Greek fire. Nobody knows its exact formula even today. The substance shoots from bronze tubes, mounted on Byzantine ships, and erupts into liquid flame across enemy vessels. Water cannot extinguish it. Sailors leap screaming into the sea while burning fire continues floating across the waves around them. Arab chroniclers describe pure horror. and Constantinople survives again. This becomes the city's defining pattern for centuries. Again and again, invading armies appear certain to destroy it. Again and again, the walls hold. Bulgars fail, Rus raiders fail, Persians fail. Even Viking mercenaries eventually serve inside the emperor's elite, Varangian Guard. Imagine that for a moment. Scandinavian warriors carrying massive axes stand watch inside the palace of the Roman emperor in Constantinople. Medieval history is far stranger than fiction. Meanwhile, the city becomes the beating heart of Orthodox Christianity. Missionaries spread Byzantine religious influence deep into Eastern Europe. In 988 AD, Prince Vladimir of Kiev reportedly converts after his envoys witness worship inside Hagia Sophia and declare they no longer know whether they were in heaven or on earth. That single decision helps shape the future identities of Russia, Ukraine, and much of Eastern Europe. But Constantinople's greatest enemy eventually comes not from Islam, but from fellow Christians. And the betrayal will nearly destroy the city forever. The year is 1204 AD. Rain falls across Constantinople as Western Crusaders stare at the richest city they have ever seen. Officially, these knights march east to reclaim Jerusalem. In reality, politics, debt, and greed drag them toward catastrophe. Venetian merchants manipulate the Crusaders into attacking Constantinople after a tangled series of financial deals and Byzantine succession disputes. Then, the unthinkable happens. Christian Crusaders storm Christianity's greatest city. You run through streets filled with panic while fires spread between crowded buildings. Churches are looted, monasteries burn. Drunken soldiers hack apart priceless works of ancient art for silver and gold hidden beneath them. Horses are reportedly led inside Hagia Sophia itself, while terrified civilians hide beneath the massive dome. One crusader later admits the amount of wealth stolen from Constantinople exceeds anything seen since the creation of the world. The damage becomes irreversible. For nearly 900 years, Constantinople had survived external enemies through sheer resilience. But this attack comes from inside the Christian world itself. The psychological wound cuts even deeper than the physical destruction. The Crusaders establish a short-lived Latin empire over the ruins, while Byzantine survivors flee and regroup elsewhere. Although Byzantine forces eventually recapture Constantinople in 1261, the city never truly recovers. Trade weakens, population collapses, entire districts fall into decay. Visitors describe abandoned palaces and empty neighborhoods where weeds grow between cracked stones. The empire shrinks into fragments, surrounded by rising Turkish powers. And one small Ottoman state in Anatolia begins expanding with frightening speed. By the 15th century, Constantinople resembles a magnificent ghost. Still proud, still legendary, but dying. And outside the walls, a young sultan prepares the final blow. The year is 1453. You wake before dawn to the sound of cannons. Not ordinary cannons. Monstrous bombards designed by the engineer Orban for Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II. Some firestone balls weighing over 1,200 pounds. Each explosion shakes the ground beneath your feet and sends centuries-old masonry crashing apart. For the first time in history, Constantinople's legendary walls face gunpowder on a massive scale. Inside the city, perhaps 50,000 civilians remain. The defenders number only around 7,000 men. Some are Genoese mercenaries, some are Venetian sailors. Some are exhausted Byzantine soldiers defending the final remains of the Roman Empire. The emperor himself, Constantine XI Palaiologos, walks the walls in armor beside ordinary troops. No escape plan, no hidden fleet waiting to rescue him, just determination. The siege lasts nearly 2 months. Ottoman artillery pounds the walls day and night. Defenders repair breaches under torchlight while priests pray through the streets. Hunger spreads, fear spreads faster. Then comes one of the most astonishing moments of the siege. The Byzantines chain off the entrance to the Golden Horn harbor to block Ottoman ships. So Mehmed responds by dragging an entire fleet over land. Workers grease wooden tracks with animal fat while Ottoman sailors haul ships across hills behind the city. Byzantine defenders wake to discover enemy warships suddenly floating inside the harbor they believed secure. Psychologically, it is devastating. Then, On the 29th of May, 1453, the final assault begins. Drums thunder across the darkness before sunrise. Ottoman soldiers surge toward the shattered walls in wave after wave. Arrows fill the air, cannons roar, steel crashes against steel. At some point during the chaos, Emperor Constantine II disappears into the fighting. His body is never conclusively identified. The last Roman emperor dies as an anonymous soldier defending the walls of Constantinople. And after more than 2,000 years of Roman imperial history stretching back to Augustus, the Roman Empire finally ends. Not with ceremony, not with surrender papers, with a city screaming beneath cannon fire. But here is the strangest truth of all. Constantinople does not vanish after 1453. It transforms again. Mehmed II enters the conquered city and immediately understands its importance. He does not destroy Constantinople, he rebuilds it. Muslims, Christians, and Jews repopulate neighborhoods emptied by war and decline. Markets reopen. Mosques rise beside ancient churches. The Ottoman Empire turns the city into one of the greatest capitals on earth once more. Eventually, the name Istanbul replaces Constantinople in everyday speech. Yet fragments of Rome still survive everywhere. In the street layouts, in underground cisterns, in cracked marble columns hidden behind modern shops, in Hagia Sophia's layered identity as church, mosque, museum, and mosque again. Even today, if you stand beside the old Theodosian walls at sunset, you can still see stones laid by Roman hands 16 centuries ago. That is what makes Constantinople unforgettable. Most civilizations disappear slowly into dust. This one kept changing shape instead. And perhaps that is why the city still feels so alive today. Because beneath modern Istanbul's traffic and skyline, the old capital of the Roman world still whispers through the streets. If you enjoyed this journey through Constantinople's extraordinary history, let me know in the comments which era shocked you most. And if you want more deep historical stories told like this, make sure to subscribe and join us for the next chapter.